wait 100 hours to eat a brownie? If it ever took me 100 hours to make a brownie when I owned my bakery, I would have been out of business. What's up and welcome back to Gretchen's Vegan Bakery. That's actually what I thought when I first saw the fabulous Alvin's recipe for 100-hour brownie. I was like, okay, what is wrong with this guy and why is it taking him 100 hours to make a brownie? So of course, like I'm sure many of you, it piqued my interest and I had to see the process behind this 100-hour brownie. If you've ever watched any of Alvin's videos, there's no words. It's like watching a Hallmark special. I was in tears by the time he was done making this brownie recipe. His videos are just completely beautiful. So I set out to get to the bottom of what all this hubbub's about, and of course I had to veganize the recipe first. And what we're going to do is put this 100-hour brownie recipe to the test against my simple, delicious 1-hour brownie. And we'll see what really is the difference. As a matter of fact, I've got my super fantastic fudgy moist 1-hour brownie recipe right here. I don't even know that we have to wait 100 hours. Who can wait 100 hours to eat a brownie?
So let's whip up this brownie recipe. This is my favorite fudge brownie recipe, veganized of course. So you will need vegan butter with a spot of molasses, and if you don't have molasses, just use light brown sugar instead of the granulated sugar that I'm using here. Now this brownie calls for cocoa powder and chocolate. That's how amazing this is. As you probably know, coffee brings out all the best qualities in chocolate in a recipe, so I urge you not to skip that, even if you are not a coffee drinker. We are using vanilla extract, of course, flour, salt, and baking powder, and I'm actually adding chocolate chips to this batter as well. Now you're going to get that vegan butter melted and actually bring it to a boil with that molasses. Then add the cocoa powder to the super hot liquid. This will unlock those perfect properties that only cocoa powder has. Next, add the chocolate, whisk it all and get it nice and melted along with that hot coffee. Now I've transferred everything to a large mixing bowl, and next I'm adding in the sugar. The vanilla extract goes in next, and then the flour, baking powder, and salt get sifted in. Give it a good stir, just don't over mix it. It's okay if there's still some specks of flour showing. Add the chocolate chips, and then spread that batter into a greased and parchment lined quarter sheet pan, and then more chocolate chunks go on top. Into the refrigerator it goes for that long pause.
So I think one of the first things you have to figure out about this project is to time this so that you are not approaching the 100-hour mark at 6 o'clock in the morning. But then again, I've never been one to complain about brownies for breakfast, which is where we're at today. We are just coming up on the 99-hour mark, and so I had to wake up super early so that I can now prepare my 1-hour brownie recipe, which is basically just my amazing fudge brownie vegan recipe, so that we can get them both into the oven at the same time, take them both out of the oven at the same time, and compare them side by side to see just what's the deal about this 100-year-old brownie. I keep calling it 100-year-old brownie instead of 100-hour, but honestly, what's the difference? When I want to eat a brownie, I don't even want to wait 1 minute. All right, let's get to the making of the second brownie, my control recipe, to compare it to this 100-hour extravaganza.
Okay, so everything we just did, one more time. But now, instead of refrigerating this batter like we did on the first go round, we can grab out that other one from 4 days ago and bake them at the same time. Now, I am marking the pan of the 100-hour brownie, so just in case they get shuffled around, I'll still know which is which. Bake them both at 350 for 25 minutes, and well, let's take a look, shall we?
Okay, so with a recipe like this one, where I've literally had days to sit and reflect upon this process, Alvin, I've got some questions for you. So the first thing that came up for me is, what's the point of letting this batter sit for 100 hours? He never in his video explained what was happening to the batter that was so beneficial by leaving it sit in the refrigerator for close to 4 days before baking. Like, what is happening that is making this 100-hour process so much better than just whipping up a brownie and throwing it in the in the oven, right? Okay, so now that these are both completely cooled, let's go ahead and cut into them and give them a more fair chance up against each other. So here I've got my 100-hour brownie. And I am going to compare them equally, like the middle piece compared to the middle piece, like not an end versus a middle piece, so that they're both like exactly as close as possible. And the one thing that I did notice as I'm handling these and cutting them is that the 100-hour brownie is less crumbly than my 1-hour brownie. So I can only use my best educated guesses in deducing that the purpose of leaving the batter to sit for days and days is that what happens is that flour naturally is going to absorb more of the liquid from the recipe, which could then cause a more fudgy, dense, less dry, less crumbly brownie. Now, that's not to say that my 1-hour brownie is crumbly or dry. It's not. It's super perfectly fudgy. I'm just noticing that slight difference from the one that did sit. The one thing that I found right away was that my brownie that I whipped up and baked right away was done in exactly 25 minutes to perfection, whereas the batter that was sitting in the refrigerator, obviously it was cold batter, so 25 minutes it was still raw inside. So I did have to pop that back into the oven for another close to 10 minutes to let it bake the rest of the way, which it finally did. So let's put it to the ultimate test, and that is the taste test. First, I want to try my 1-hour brownie because that's the one I'm most familiar with. It's so good. Like, tasting this, I would never imagine that it would need anything different. It's perfect. Super fudgy. It stays together. It's delicious. And it only took like an hour. Okay, 100-hour brownie. What have you got? I don't know. They're both like almost exactly the same. The texture is the same. So it's sort of like, as I'm eating them now, I'm not really seeing the difference that I did see when I was cutting it. So that was the first thing I thought when I was cutting it and handling these brownies. I was like, well, the 100-hour brownie definitely is a little bit less crumbly, but as I'm tasting them now, they taste exactly the same. 100-hour, 1 hour. You guys, they taste the same to me. Why wait 100 hours when you can have a perfect fudge brownie in less than 1? Life is too short to wait 100 hours to eat a brownie. All right, everybody, thanks again for watching, and until next time, happy vegan baking. Bye for now. So I just wanted to pop back on here to make a little bit of a disclaimer, I guess, with this experiment recipe. I thought it went without saying that obviously you guys know that I'm using vegan recipes. So I got to thinking that maybe it's difficult to really compare equally 100% my vegan recipe versus Alvin's heavy egg recipe, which a traditional brownie would have heavy eggs in it. So, you know, maybe that is the magical factor in what makes his 100-hour brownie so special from just a traditional mix and bake recipe. But what I can say for sure is that the magical key to life is to live your life as cruelty-free as possible, and that makes all the difference in the world, and the only way to do that is to go vegan, guys. So yeah, just kind of want to put that out there. It's really hard for me to compare exactly one-to-one a non-vegan recipe versus a vegan recipe, but you know, for the most part, I think my experiment really did sort of explain that I do not need to wait 100 hours to have a perfect brownie. So with all that being said, I also want to use this little minute to thank all of my patrons on Patreon and my pals in PayPal. Just the amount of chocolate that I bought to do this experiment and test these recipes was unbelievable. And so, you know, the cost to buy these ingredients and to put these videos out for you guys would not be happening if not for my patrons on Patreon and my pals in PayPal. So thank you guys. As always, it's just really never enough to just say thank you. You don't know how much your support means to me. If it wasn't for you, this channel would have been long gone. So if you think you can help support for as little as $1 a month, click the links below to find out how. All right, everybody, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again soon.